had this feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. And it just felt like if this is the day I'm going to die, I do not want to die with fear in my heart. And as soon as I had that thought, I found myself not in the hole anymore, but I found myself on the side of the river.
Welcome, Ken. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate being here.
You're welcome. For those who are watching, can you give a little bit of a background and then take us into the near-death experience that you had?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm 67 years old, and my experience happened in 96. I was 37. Um, I was in construction my whole life. I'm now retired and I live in Tallahassee, Florida. And in the last 2 years, I've started to talk about my NDE where I didn't want to talk about it at all. So it's kind of new for me to talk about this, and it's been kind of a whirlwind the last few months. So I'm here to
Okay,
share my experience. So thank you.
beautiful. What brought on you wanting to share your experience? Was there some kind of knowing or an intuitive guidance?
Yeah, about 6, 7 years ago, I had a knowing that was coming, and I knew something was coming. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was coming, and I kind of had an idea, but I basically said I didn't want to do it then. And then the next year it happened a little stronger, and then I said the same thing. I didn't want to do it, and it was 2 years ago that basically I would call like a spiritual meltdown.
Mhm.
And it told me I have no choice. I had to do it. So that's what started this whole thing spiraling into me starting to talk about the things I didn't want to talk about. And it's very hard to talk about something that is very hard to describe. It's like, trying to describe a color who somebody does cannot physically see. It's really hard to do that. So if somebody hasn't experienced this, it's really, and that experience is more of a feeling and it's more of a knowing, and that's pretty hard to describe. And I'm learning how to articulate it in words and best describe it, and that I'm still having a hard time figuring that out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for joining us to go over your near-death experience and explain it the best as you can. A lot of us, including myself, I've had one, and it is hard to articulate into words because nothing really quite really grasps what actually happens, especially the sense of the love and a lot of things that happen during the near-death experiences. So, if you would you take us through the near-death experience?
Yeah, that's so true about the love, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's nothing like it here on Earth. It's You hit places where it's close, but it's nothing like that. It's just all encompassing.
Exactly.
um, so my my NDE happened in '96, October 6th, and I was whitewater kayaking. It was a passion that I loved, and that weekend I went up with my friend Frank, and we went up for the weekend to paddle, and we went up to this river that I paddled many times before, and we paddled it Saturday, and then Sunday the river was up a little bit higher that day, so the river was a little bit more pushier, but nothing beyond my limits. Um, and I ended up getting stuck in a hole and could not get out. And I struggled for quite a while in that hole, trying to doing everything that I knew to get out of that hole. And eventually I came out of my boat. And when I came out of my boat, it was like being tumbled in a washing machine, or you know, like if you've been at the beach, you might think of like a big wave hitting you and you get tumbled and you don't know which way's up or down. And it was like that kind of feeling. So it was very, very disoriented. I didn't know which way was up or down. And so I struggled. And each time I came up, I thought that would be my last breath. And so the fear of drowning was becoming more and more. And I was really, really struggling. Like, you know, I don't know if you've ever been the fear of drowning, but it's pretty intense. And eventually I got caught up with my boat in a hole, which gave me a little bit of a reprieve from that. And they were at that time they were getting throw ropes and throwing them at me. And one landed right real close to me, and I went to reach it, but the water had grabbed it and went away. And eventually my boat left the hole, but I stayed in it. And as I struggled some more, keep getting recirculating in this hole, just going back and forth, go down, get tumbled, and then pop up just when I feel like I'm going to run out of air. And then I get stuck back in and do it all over again. I had this feeling like, oh my gosh, I am going to die. I didn't, I just felt like if this is the day I'm going to die, I do not want to die with fear in my heart. And as soon as I had that thought, I found myself not in the hole anymore, but I found myself on the side of the river. And now I was looking down at the river and I was looking down at the hole. And I could see it was like I had a 360 view of everything, but I was focusing on the hole for some odd reason. But I didn't see me in there. What I did see was a friend of mine that I knew in a canoe come down, and he got stuck in the hole. And then he flipped a few times and then rolled up, and then he eventually got out of the hole. And I thought, well, he got out of the hole, and that's pretty interesting. And the next thing I remember, I was, I don't know where I was, but I was like viewing like a screen. And in that screen was my life review from when I was just born to then, which I was 37. And I viewed it in order, from birth to then in chronological order. And I was viewing, it was so strange. I was viewing everything that I thought, everything I said, everything I did. I mean, I'm talking everything. How I felt, what I did, my actions, my thoughts, my speech, everything. And I was viewing it from a place of what I didn't do well, where I didn't love well, where I could have done better, where I had chances to do things like be more kind, be more loving, be more considerate, be more compassionate. And I had a chance to do those and I didn't do those. And I also had a chance to pick out, be able to stop that viewing whenever I wanted and pick out a particular moment that meant something that I've learned. And so I remember picking out a few moments of where I didn't do very well. And I saw how it affected not only me, but I also saw how it affected those that I caused that or been unkind or whatever to them, and how it felt for them. And then it also how it rippled out into the world. Like if I did something, let's say to you, and you have children, you might have gone home and treated your children badly, or might have, scolded them or been angry at them for no odd reason other than just the fact you did that. And so the consequences of my actions triggered that and rippled out all across. I just saw it rippling out. It's like, I keep saying, it's like dropping a rock in a lake that's flat, perfectly calm. And then that ripple just goes out and fills that whole space. it was like that action was like a ripple and just rippled out across the universe. It just went out like that. And so then after I had that viewing of all the things I didn't do well, I remember thinking, wow, I could have done better. I could have done better in this life, you know. It wasn't bad, but I could have done better. And there was no one to judge me on that. I judged it for myself. And then all of a sudden, I found myself going back again, this time from the same point of view from birth to when I was 37. But this time, I got to view all the things I did well, all the things where I loved well, all the things I was kind. And, and I also got to stop that at any time I wanted and to view that experience more fully and how it affected them and how it affected those around them and how it rippled out. And it was what amazed me was, you know, what amazed me, uh, it's, the things that I thought were my greatest achievements were not. It was the littlest things that mattered the most. The littlest kindness you did, like picking somebody up, or they drop something on the floor, you pick it up for them, or you nod and say hi, hi, you make contact. Uh, it's just very littlest things that mattered the most. There wasn't all these things that I thought, I needed, like money, success, a house, and being able to travel and all these things. Those are nice things and they're very nice and they're comfortable, but they weren't that important in my life review. What was important was how kind and loving I was. That was the most important thing in my life. And so after that life review, I thought, wow, I really have loved well. Um, I can leave, I can go, I can die with peace in my heart, is what I thought. And then I found myself being zapped back into my body. And now I felt myself back in my body, but this time there wasn't any turbulence. It felt completely calm, peaceful. There was no water pushing on my back or front, or I wasn't struggling to get air. It was just complete peace. And I felt like, wow, I can die with complete peace in my heart, with no fear. And and I just remember raising my hands up and just saying, okay, God, I'm ready to go. Now, the time that I had that thought of, I don't want to die with peace in my heart, to the time I put up my hands and said, okay, God, I'm ready to go. In our time frame, it was like a second. But yet I just finished watching the scene on the river, and yet I just experienced my life review two times. I mean, I'm talking everything in that life. I mean, my life. So 37 years, I just saw everything twice. But in this time, it was only a second. And as I put up my hands to say, okay, God, I'm ready to go, all of a sudden I found myself just floating in a black void. And I'm just floating there thinking, wow, is this death? Is this heaven? Is this hell? Is this purgatory? I mean, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was experiencing. It didn't feel bad. It felt very peaceful, and um, there wasn't a bad feeling. It was just, I wasn't sure where I was. Excuse me. And I remember thinking, wow, this is nothing like that from what I heard of people dying, like seeing the pearly gates, or, meeting a guide, or meeting Jesus or God, or, you know. So I thought, well, maybe, me being raised Catholic, I thought, well, maybe this is purgatory. Maybe I'm not meant to be at the pearly gates yet. And there's certainly, I'm not meeting the devil. So it's probably not hell. So I mean, my assumption at the time, I thought, well, maybe it's just purgatory. Maybe I'm just supposed to be here for a while, you know. Um, and then all of a sudden, I heard a voice, and the voice said, "No, it's not heaven, and no, it's not hell, and no, it's not purgatory. It's you've just left uh, an earthly experience, and this is a transition." And now this voice was not only voice, but it was also communicating to me in thoughts, like I was getting thoughts and images, but also, so I'm speaking to you in words, but I'm trying to put those thoughts and the words in so that you can know what they were kind of communicating to me. And that voice was like, you've had this experience and you left quickly, and this is a transition. And what and they were stressing want you to do is let go of those things which you hold on to. And I thought, what does this voice mean by that? I quite, I didn't understand. And the voice said it again. We want you to let go of those things which you hold on to. And I really didn't know what it meant. And then I remember flashing back and thinking about when I was younger, between like 18 and 21, I used to leave my body quite a bit. And back then in the 70s, there really wasn't much about leaving out of body experiences. So I really didn't know what I was doing. It just happened to me. I thought it was these really cool experiences that I got to experience. But in one of these experiences, I remember leaving my body and I wanted to know who I was truly. And they showed me who I was. I mean, a lot of things happened in that, but they showed me who I was. And what I was light. It was just light. And in that light that they showed me who I was, I saw little pinholes of like darkness, like little dots around my light. And some were dark, real black, some were grayish, some were lighter than others. But they were speckled around my light. And it was where the light didn't shine through. And then I remember there was like this big black scar down my chest, and it looked like like I had a wound there, and somebody closed it up and put sutures on it. And I remember at the time having that experience thinking, wow, that's where I don't let my light shine through. That's my fears. That was my thought when I had that experience. It was my fears. So now when that voice said, yeah, let go of those things you hold on to, I then immediately telepathically sent the message back to them saying, do you mean like when you showed me who I was in that light and those little dark spots, the fears and things I was holding on to, the beliefs and things? I mean, it was like a big chorus of eruption. I mean, it was like in unison, all these beings said, yes. I mean, they just exploded in this like, yes, he got it. He got it. They were hoping that I get it. And 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 they were so happy that I got it. And it was just like they were all clapping like I was a little boy, that I've done this great thing. And so I said, okay, I'll let go of those things that I hold on to. And as I let go of those things that I was holding on to, I found myself expanding and expanding and expanding. And each time I let go, it was like I was being healed. And it was like, and peace, and tranquility that came over me was so immense. It was, it was so incredible that each time I let go of something, I just expanded more and more, and I felt more peaceful, more blissful, more joyous. And to the point I finally let go of all those things I held on to, and I was just existing in the void. And the void was like there was no end to it. And I was the void. I was part of that, and yet I was this individual unit of consciousness. And I still had my consciousness that I have now, except for the now I felt connected to everything, everything in the universe I connected to and felt that connection. And I felt, and to me, and it was like pure bliss and pure joy and pure peace. And and in that moment, it felt like, to me, it still feels like, it felt like when I was first created. It, to me, I think of it as like, wow, that's must have how I felt when I was first created. And that black void was there for me to create. And in that black void, you get to create whatever you want. And whatever you create, so to speak, God will love and cherish whatever you create. And that's what it felt like to me. And at that moment, I had no thoughts other than just the experience. I had no understanding of who I was again. I had no experience of anything, no earth, nothing. I was completely blank. I had no thoughts of past, present, nothing. So I didn't know that I had an earthly experience. I didn't know that I had many past lives. I didn't even know earth existed. I, I was just pure consciousness. And then after a while, I looked around and I saw that there was this light in the distance. And in that light, I noticed it was a change from the darkness. And it was like the sun, like just getting a glimmer of the twilight, like the sun coming up. It was just a hint different. And I looked and I thought, well, I don't know what that is. And I went to investigate. And as I got there, it got brighter and brighter and brighter. And all of a sudden, I found myself standing in uh, like a screen, kind of be. It was like a white screen made out of clouds, and they were white, very bright white, but you could look at them. And I'm on the side that's dark, but here is this light emanating from this screen, and I can see through the screen, but I couldn't see, like it's like taking a shower and it's kind of foggy. You can't see, but you can kind of see, make out detail. It was kind of like that. I could see through this the clouds of white, and it was oscillating. And I could see that it was a place, some place, and it had hills, and there was a path coming in between the hills right to where I was. And I could see in the distance, like buildings. And the buildings, I'm a carpenter, and I'm like, wow, those buildings don't look like anything here on Earth. Uh, they look more like, uh, it's hard to describe, but they look more like the buildings are made out of light, which is hard to, for me to wrap my head around a building made out of light. Um, and I thought, I wonder what this place is. And I could see color. I could see one hill was kind of yellowish, another hill was like maroon, and it wasn't like sharp, like it was muted. It was kind of the scene was muted. And as out there looking at the scene, I noticed that these beings were walking down this path, and there's about a dozen of them, and they walked up right where I was, and I could feel their presence immediately. I could feel that they knew me and I knew them. I couldn't see them. I knew they were beings, and I don't know whether they were human or any other beings, but they had a shape of a human, but I couldn't tell if they had arms, legs, heads. But they had kind of a shape of a human. But I knew that I knew each and every one of them, and they were there to greet me, and they were to welcome me home, is what it felt like. And there was going to be a big celebration for me coming back home. And I was like, I was like, wow. And the interesting thing was that all of a sudden I felt a different feeling than I had before in that void. And that was love. I felt love from them. Um, and I felt this immense love from all of them. And I felt I had a love for them too. And I was so happy that I was going to I knew that all I had to do is go through this veil and I would be home. And as I was getting ready to go back, just about get through, this voice, the same voice, came over and said, nope, it's not your time. You have to go back. There are still things you have to do. And when that voice said that, I didn't question it at all. It was a voice of truth, understanding, and wisdom, way more than I knew. I just knew, I just knew that that voice knew more what I needed and what was best for me than I did myself, and had much more knowledge and understanding. And whatever they said was the truth. There was no lie in what that person said. And I don't know who that person was, but it was the person, it was a person that spoke truth. And I understood it to be truth. So I didn't question it. So I said, okay. I didn't know what I was saying okay to, but I knew I had to do whatever they said because that felt right. That felt that I needed to do that. As soon as I agreed to that, I found myself getting like zapped back into my body. And it was like, it was such a painful experience. I mean, it was, oh my gosh. Imagine taking the whole universe and trying to squeeze it down into this vessel I call my body, is what it felt like. That immense um, expansion and feeling connected to everything. And all of a sudden, boom, you're into this. It felt so dense and so heavy and so like just constrictive. It felt like I was in, like somehow I got smothered and I had no room to breathe, no room to move. And and all my fears, all my beliefs, everything came rushing back at the same time as I feeling this great pressure. And as I came back into my body, I just remember screaming inside, saying that I made a mistake. Please take me back. Please take me back. I want to go home. And I didn't hear any voices or nothing. It was just they weren't talking to me. And now I'm in my body, and I remember the pain that I had just from not only that experience, but I also my chest hurt immensely. It was like somebody was punching me. And I opened my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, I didn't know where I was because everything that I see was different. It was the light was different, the trees looked different, people look all I didn't see people. I just saw their essence, their light. The light that I talked about earlier, I saw everybody was that light. And I couldn't see their faces. I didn't know who they were. I could only distinguish them by their voices. So if I knew you beforehand and I knew your voice, I knew that would be like my friend Frank, or I knew it would be the other guy I paddle with, Richard. Um, but I couldn't see them. And so I was just seeing their light. And I was wondering where am I? How did I get here? And how I got there was no short of a miracle. Going back, when I put up my hands and said, okay, God, I'm ready to go, they had already started to on shore. Instead of going for a rescue, they were preparing to get a body rescue because it's already was several minutes that I was in that hole unconscious. And they saw that I wasn't keeping my head above water. And as they said, Ken, you were a rag doll. You were just being pulling around, flailing like this, and you made no effort to keep your head above water. So they realized that I was unconscious. So the only way to go in that get that body, it wasn't getting flushed out of that hole. So they were getting two guys to go in there. They had special life jackets. They were going to go in there and try to get the body out. And just before they were about to do that, this fella that his name is David, he was throwing throw-ups earlier, but he stopped because he saw that I wasn't making any effort and I was unconscious. But something told him to throw the throw rope one more time. And he was very religious, and he said a prayer, Jesus, please help this man, and he threw the throw rope, and the throw rope went in the hole and disappeared. And then he said, all of a sudden the throw rope came out of the water with me holding on to it with my hand. And at that point, everybody said that they witnessed it. They said, Ken, we felt like we had just witnessed a miracle, which they did. I mean, the odds of one throwing that rope and then getting in my hands was, 1,000,000 to 1, 1,000,000 to 1. So David started pulling me, thinking that, well, maybe I'm unconscious. But when he pulled me to shore, he he was wondering why I wasn't making any effort to keep my head above water. So my head stayed below the water. And as I got to shore, my friend Frank jumped in, turned me over, and he said, Ken, you were the face of a dead man. You were gray, you were lifeless. There was no life that I could see in you. And immediately they pulled me out. And that group David was with, he was paddling with six people. A month or two before, they decided to take um, a CPR course, thinking that it might help somebody. Well, long and behold, they're using it. So that's why my chest felt like somebody, like I was a punching bag, and I was having a hard time breathing. And then my my friend Richard was ER doctor, and he went after my boat. So he was downriver collecting my gear and doing all that. And my friend Frank, seeing me dead, he lost it. He just was unconsolable. And somebody had mentioned there's there a doctor around, and my friend Frank said, "Yeah, our friend Richard." So he went down and got Richard, and Richard came back a little time later, and noticed that they didn't cut my. I had a dry top, which has a gasket, and on my hands. And so when they started CPR, they didn't, they couldn't find a pulse, or they couldn't, I wasn't breathing, so they immediately started CPR. When Richard got there, he had them cut the gasket, cut my, off the wrist, and then he searched for a pulse, and he said he felt like he detected a small beat, like very, very faint and very, very weak. So he said not to do the compressions anymore, which I'm kind of thankful because they probably would have cracked my ribs. uh, and so they just did mouth to mouth for like about another uh, 8 to 10 minutes. And then that guy, David, he was doing the mouth to mouth for a while. And then once again, he said he can't watch this man die. He felt like he had to do something else. So he went and knelt pretty close to me and he said a prayer to Jesus again. And this time he said, please, Jesus, let this man live. And he said, as soon as he finished saying that prayer, I let a big like that. So I came back. So, I mean, those are, the power of prayer is pretty powerful, I think. Um, in the meantime, for the next 45 minutes, I, watch people, the light. I couldn't quite see them. I could recognize that I could feel everybody. I could feel their feelings. And everybody around me was in panic mode. And I didn't understand why they were in panic mode. But there was a woman that I had taken a course with, and she had a very distinct Southern accent. And at this time, she was holding me up because it helped me breathe better and holding me to keep me warm because it was in October and the air was chilly and I was cold. and she had a very soothing voice, and she was very calm. And she was just telling me, Ken, you've had an accident. You're fine. Everything is good. You'll be fine. Help's on the way. And so for the next 40 minutes, I just kind of concentrated on her and not really other people. They were just too frantic. And at that time, normally, I mean, at this time, there wasn't cell phones or anything, but there just so happened to be a rafting company coming through, and they just so happened to have a walkie-talkie back to their base in case something happened. And so they asked if they could help. Richard identified who he was. They raided back the base. They raided to the medical paramedics, whoever, and they met them at the river. They ferried them across, and these guys ran like 2 or 3 miles down the gorge, down these railroad tracks. And I don't know how they found me, but they found me, and they brought down a stretcher and some oxygen and something else. And I remember they shot me up with something and put a mask over my face. And all of a sudden, I could breathe a little bit better, and I could start seeing better. I could start seeing people's faces. And at that time, just when that happened, this helicopter flew by, was flying back and forth, and I was wondering what it was there for. And they they landed on a rock right in front of me and jumped out and grabbed me. And I'm still thinking, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I've just had this weird dream. Something happened. I'm not sure, but I'm fine. I'm okay. But next thing I know, I found myself put in the back of a helicopter and taken to the hospital, where I spent the next week recovering. And I was very weak. I mean, when I got to the hospital, they said my oxygen saturation level was like 55, which is pretty low. It's like almost death. And I couldn't even lift up. I mean, I couldn't even lift up my hand or even hold. They wanted me to sign documents. I couldn't even hold the pen or lift my hand up. So the nurse grabbed my hand and like that. And, um, so the next week I recovered, and my wife at the time, she came the next day. Same with my mom, and so they were helping me get better. And I was telling my wife. I didn't tell my mom, but I told my wife, and I was telling the doctors, my experience. And at the time, the doctors said, well, that was just your lack of oxygen. It wasn't really real. It was a great dream you had. And my wife believed me, but at the same time, I was having that veil between our world and the next was really thin for me at that time. So I kept seeing the room change into other worlds, and I kept and like I'd look down on the floor and I'd be looking at a beautiful canyon, and I'd tell my wife, "Can't you see the canyon there on the floor? Or can't you see the forest over there? And can't you see the birds fly?" And she thought I was like something happened in my brain, and that I'm crazy, or maybe that I'm about to die again. And so she had a lot of fear. So I during the next couple of days, I kind of squashed that down. I didn't quite talk about it anymore because I could see it was frightening them. So I came home, and for the next few years, I was severely depressed. I didn't want to be here. So, I mean, that's my experience in a nutshell.
Wow, that is quite a journey. Definitely an experience. And a lot of times, they are very life-changing. I know mine was. And so it does take a while to talk about it and process it. And a lot of people who've had near-death experience, like I knew nobody would understand. So I never talked about it, afterwards until like a couple of years, actually. Mine was in 2010. And yeah, so it does take a while. Not everybody's open, you know, um, to have these conversations. They're not accepting, medical team, obviously, they don't think, beyond the medical fields. Um,
Right.
but yeah, but thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's
Sure.
very powerful. You hit on a lot of things that most near-death experiencers talk about, like the void, the love, um, hearing the voice, you know. So, and then the beings. So thank you so much. It's really helpful for a lot of people. So we appreciate it.
And one of the things I like to at least let people know that are listening that, just because I've had an NDE doesn't mean that I'm any more special than you are. And I also I've had out of body experience too, where I experienced the same things as an NDE. So we all can do that ourselves. And just the fact, all of us leave every night when we go to sleep. We leave our bodies and travel into that other realms. But most of us don't remember it. And if you do remember dreams, it feels like a dream. But when you can become conscious of doing that, like leaving your body and be conscious, know you're out of body and conscious, it is more real than here. And so there are a lot of things, if people want to explore that, I encourage them to be curious and do that. There's lots of people on YouTube that can explain that in much better terms than I can, and how to do it and techniques in which you can do. So if you're listening to this, be curious, explore, and it, you'll get to experience something like what most NDEs experience.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I've had some experiences where I was out of the body, which is very much like the near death experiences. And, it's becoming, kind of a big thing. People are intentionally trying to do out of body experiences and explorations. So that's great. And just briefly, one of my near death experience, well, inside of the near death experience, my out of body, I was doing yoga and I was laying in Vanasa. And that's after your session, and you're just laying there in like the death pose, which is kind of funny and unique at the same time. And there was this white light hovering above me, and I intuitively, not with my hand per se, my physical hand, because I was just laying there relaxing. I see my hand, my energetic hand, reach up to the light, and then I was absorbed into the light. And then once I was there, I realized I shouldn't be out of the body. I turned around and looked at my body on the floor, and I was immediately put back into the body. So there's a lot to be said about the light and who we are. And I think you said it perfectly. We're light, we're consciousness with free will, right? And we can create, and a lot of people, I know with the religious context and beliefs, a lot of times we get thrown off on, some of the topics, what or who we truly are. But I think that sums up really well, what you said, we're consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I had lots of times when I left my body when I was younger, and then I had an experience where it just scared the heck out of me, which after that experience, I realized I didn't know what I was doing. And I decided that I wouldn't do that anymore until I did figure out what happened and what I was doing. And so now it's in that the last 2 years, um, I have started to really grasp the wanting to be here. Whereas before, after my experience, I didn't want to be here. I just wanted to live my life, be kind and compassionate and loving, but just live my life and wait for when I left. And I was looking forward to when I leave. But I wasn't fully immersing myself into this earthly experience, physical experience. And so 2 years ago, I had that so called meltdown. I call it a meltdown because all of my fears, all of my beliefs, they came rushing into me. And I had to deal with them. I really just had to deal with them. And and that's what I've been doing this last 2 years, basically, is, you know, looking through all my fears. Oh, yeah, it's like, okay, work on that one. Okay, I feel like I got that one out of the way. I mean, another one pops up. Then, oh, there's another one. And then you think, oh, I got it now. And another one pops up. It's just, it, it feels constantly always happening. But I noticed that my internal being is changing and I'm becoming um, I'm becoming more joyous just because I don't know if that makes sense.
Mhm.
There's no reason for the joy. It's just I'm joy because just because. And even the hardships, I look forward to those because it gives me a chance to it just gives me a chance to choose what I want to choose. And I choose love over fear. And that's what I've been doing this last 2 years and and being curious about all these beliefs and things I held on to. I'm finally getting to the point of accepting them and experiencing them and then deciding what I want to do with them. And if I want to hold on to them, I hold on to them. If I want to let them go, I let them go. And it's given me a lot more freedom because I get to choose, and it's not, somebody's not making me miserable. I make my own self miserable. Uh, no one's creating suffering for me. I am creating my own suffering, so to speak. And so, you know, I find that that is such a blessing to be here. And obviously, you would understand because you've been the other side. There is no separation. It's just love and that connection, and so deep and so it's all encompassing. But here, it's not. You get to experience what it's like not to be connected, not to feel love. And that contrast, I just feel like that gives us a greater understanding. To me, it feels like being here and experience all these things. To me, the words that come to my mind is it deepens the quality of my love. So why would I not want to be here? And I feel like all those 20 some odd years that from the time I had that experience to now, I just kind of like floated by. I was just floating above the earth, looking down and not trying to get involved in anything. I was just aloof, basically. And now, when I put my full feet both planted here, it just comes at me like a storm, but I get to choose how I want to react, how I want to be. You know? So
Mhm.
I'm I'm so grateful that I was able to at least get to this point in my life where I know that.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think a lot of us who have had a near-death experience kind of struggle when we first get back. I know I did. And still, every now and then it comes up, but it's trying to, like you said, integrate it and like kind of look at, okay, I'm here for a reason, dive into life, and be a part of it instead of just kind of hovering around, and I did that myself. So I can kind of relate to that. And it wasn't easy coming back into the body either. Because when I woke up, I knew I was back here because I remember the thought coming to me like, oh God, I'm back here. So I knew I had been somewhere else other than here just by those first words coming out of my mouth and through my mind that I was actually back here, which was an indicator that, okay, something actually really did happen, right? For me, that I was somewhere else. than here. But it's always, it's like integration. We really have to try to integrate. It's not always easy, though, coming back in after experiencing, the love. And I kind of like that you had talked about with the void, because I had the void experience. You talked about it as a transition. And I'm learning a lot from you in listening to your story, as well as everybody else that I get to speak with, because they all make things click, right? To help with
Right.
learning and understanding it. So my void, I went into the void, and then same with you, like they told you in a different way, but they told me to drop my human senses, my human self and everything, so I could go into the light. And I feel like there's this, you have to drop that in order to go into light, because it seems like once you dropped or um let go of, they told you to let go of it, if I
Right.
remember correctly. They
Yeah.
told me to drop it, which is very similar to the same thing. And then the
Right.
light shows up, right? And then in the
Right.
light for me was light beings, kind of like there was beings in the light that came towards you. So it's really interesting how they do correlate
Hmm.
across people's experiences with the near death experience.
Right. I, yeah, they want to, for me, from all my mystical experiences that I've had, they want to relate to you and they want it to relate to you. So whatever symbols mean this for you or that, that's those symbols mean something for you. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot for me, the symbols that that experience that I had, that I could relate it to that, you know. So
Yeah, yeah. So it's really interesting. And a lot of people will call it like the near death hallmarks, because they're very similar in the experience. Now, with the voice, was it more of a masculine or feminine, or was it non-descriptive, just the voice?
it was more male, masculine,
Masculine.
ex- except for when they had the chorus. It felt like everybody. I do remember, now that you meant, I do remember that when I got back home, I remember being in the kitchen. This is about maybe 2 weeks later, and I was by myself, and I was just sitting there in the kitchen, and I could feel like like the kitchen was full of people, like full of beings, and they were all cheering me on. And it was kind of the same feeling that like that, but I could just sense them and feel them, and I had my eyes closed, and I literally thought, if I open my eyes, I'm going to see this room packed full of people, is what it felt like. And so that voice that I heard was masculine, but it was speaking of, it was all I can say. It just felt like the truth. It was totally 100% true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's just a feeling, a sense. From just not my experience, but from what I gather that other people talk about, you're just kind of like sensing the authority. It's like an authority, but not really necessarily like authority over you in a sense. Like they
Right,
have
right.
more knowledge or wisdom in that
Yeah.
sense.
And it was every word or every thought was out of love.
Mhm.
There was nothing it was nothing but it was like love in words and thoughts.
Yeah, beautiful. The other thing I liked about your journey and what you were sharing is the life review. I do that as part of some of my services to help people walk people through a life review here now. And so that would include, kind of like you were saying, like going through our fears, looking at things that we have maybe done or something was done with us, and try to heal and work on that. And change that and take those little black bits, pieces, and turn them into light, right? So we can expand more. And that makes sense to me because, like, I spent 10 years after my near death experience doing self healing and self work and inner child healing. And changing my whole life. And it's almost like that person before no longer exists. It's like I'm a whole different existence, if that makes sense, from doing that. And part of that, I bring that to the life review for people as one of my services. Now, you talk about, which a lot of near others don't talk about, is you got to see it from two different perspectives, what you did well and what you didn't do well. A lot of people may have the thought or the belief that it's only about judgment and, going to hell or being punished, purgatory, and we're being judged, but we're really looking and reviewing our lives. And the other thing is that I want to try to change the word judgment around it, because it's not really a judgment. From my understanding, it's more of an evaluation, because we get to evaluate our lives, and just take a look at it. It's almost like being in school, right?
Yeah.
We kind of look at our lives, we evaluate it, and I kind of want to try to change that word around, the life review, judging, punishment, bad, but it's just reevaluating, and seeing where we can do better. Because that is actually one of the questions, and you said it. How could I have done better? Right? That is one of the actual questions that I brought back from my near-death experience that I remembered going through the life review myself. So,
Yeah, the analogy of a school is a really good analogy. It's like a school with no grades. There's no passing or failing.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's just a beautiful journey. And I think a lot of the human concepts around death and passing over and going home can be very, I guess, shadowed or negative. But it's really not. It's not. It's all for, the better of our evolution, right? So it helps us to evolve.
It's
Um,
like dying is your graduation.
yep. Yeah, it's a transition. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so the other thing I wanted to kind of talk about with that is like you're doing a little bit on the side. So I wanted to kind of shift a little bit because I noticed also that you're working with a hickory preserve. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, a bunch of us, this land came up for sale, 100 acres in Tallahassee, and it was a very unique pot of land. It had some old remnants of hickory, long, shortleaf pine habitat, which was, it was Red Hills type of habitat for that area, and we wanted to preserve it. And and I got involved early on to help try to figure out how we're going to raise money and buy this piece of land. And that land was uh, um, the cost was $1.6 million, and we didn't have any money, nothing. And but we just had a dream that we could do it. And we approached the owner and said, "Listen, we're a group of people. We'd like to buy this land. We have no money. Would you give us a year to purchase it, to raise the money?" And long and behold, they said, "Yeah." And they could have sold it to a developer, you know. And by miracles of all miracles, it happened. Within a year, we raised money enough to help pay some of it off. Plus, we got a loan, which was unheard of in the banking terms. It's like this banker's like in his 25 years, he's never seen a loan like this happened for a nonprofit to get a loan for $800,000. And we got some other loans from other individuals. And it just came all together. And we, and just at the end of May, just a few weeks ago, we finally got in conservation with the state of Florida, and they gave us 1.15 million to help pay back our loan. We still owe some money, but it's working out that we preserve this land for future generations, and so I'm involved in that. I'm on the board, and so I'm just happy that a group of individuals. We had a dream and we made it happen. And we believed
Beautiful.
it could happen. And I think that's true with anything. If you have a desire and intention, you know, there's a way. There's a way for you to manifest that. So
Yeah, beautiful. And thank you so much for doing that and being a part of that because we definitely need that. We need to preserve the land as much as possible with all the growth and building and everything that we're going through, kind of wiping out areas that we really need um, that to be a part of the earth and not to be
yeah,
done with it. Now,
right.
yeah. So the other thing is like the life purpose. So they mentioned, and this may be part of your life purpose, helping out with that. So they said that you have more work to do. Do you know what that actually is, or?
Um, Not specifically, no, not in great detail, but I have a overall sense of what that is. And that is for me to be more authentic and for me to shine my light, so that others can see themselves. And 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 so what I'm doing personally right now, and I feel called to do, is having us as people really connect with each other. Because in this day and age, there's so much information happening out there in the world that it's so much happening at such a fast rate. We're becoming so dependent on that information and seeing all the things on the phone and on screen and news. It's really creating a disconnect, not more of a connect. Even though you're texting somebody and you're sharing pictures, you're not really connecting. You feel like you are, um, but it's not genuine connection. And so for me, I'm helping, like, getting people together to connect with each other in a real way, and to share our experiences and to talk about things that are meaningful to each other. And how I'm doing it, I'm connected to this nonprofit called Living God's Light. And it's where we share our beliefs or ideas in a non judgmental way. It's non denominational. It's just about sharing your connection with each other and Creator. And so facilitate groups or events, uh, and that's what I've been doing, to get us together and talk about like what we're talking about here. And I also do that in person. I do it on Zoom, but I also do it in person in Tallahassee. So I, I I feel like that's really important for us to bring light back into this world. To to We're all light beings. It's just having us remember we're light and peel away those layers so the light does shine through. That's always there to shining through, but just that we block it off. And as we become more light, so does the world. And I think it's really important for us to be doing that right now.
Yeah,
So,
beautiful. Yeah, we definitely need that. Yeah, for sure. And if somebody wanted to join you in the conversations or find out more about you or everything that you're doing, do you have a website or where can they find you?
well, they just go look up livinggodslight.org, and they can join. It's free. They can join there. And they have a Discord channel, and in it has all sorts of things like general chat, introductions, fun and inspirations, meditation, in different categories. And you can plug in and chime in wherever you want. Um, and then they also have events. And right now I'm having an event that's once a week, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. and anybody can join it. Um, there is a link on the website. You can click on that link and join. Um, and if I'm not doing an event, I probably will, or there's other events too that if, so whatever sparks your interest. So
Beautiful. Thank you. And thanks again, Ken, for sharing your journey and your story of the near death experience and for being there.
well, thank you for having me.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.